I had a problems with the statements you were made, and then how do you come to that conclusion, which really does get to the podcaster world versus other individuals on how did you come to that opinion or that declarative statement, like Israel is intentionally killing civilians.
Hey folks, this is the other Barack coming to you live and direct from an undisclosed location. We have a video of John Spencer, an expert in urban modern warfare, talking to Dave Smith on Piers Morgan. Dave Smith was recently on Joe Rogan talking to Douglas Murray about Israel-Palestine, the whole thing. A very, very highly viewed video. Let's see what happened on Piers Morgan.
Camp, you tweeted, Dave Smith and Douglas Murray debated who qualifies as an expert and who should be making declarative statements about certain wars. That question answers itself. And that's been construed, John, to mean that you believe that Dave Smith was not the expert in the room. Explain why you felt that Dave Smith lost this debate.
Sure. I wouldn't say it had anything to do with Douglas. I would have to say it was the statements that Dave Smith made during the podcast, which highlight, and I won't get into the credentialism as Dave's quoting four-star generals or who's an expert, who's not. I do research. I think Dave tells jokes for a living. I had a problems with the statements you were made, and then how do you come to that conclusion, which really does get to the podcaster world versus other individuals on how did you come to that opinion or that declarative statement, like Israel is intentionally killing civilians? I mean, there's like 10 different ways you can do research. You can do comparative, case study. And I think this is what Douglas was saying. If you haven't been there, then how are you getting to your conclusion? You ethnographic, you can go there and do interviews in Gaza, like both Douglas and I have done with soldiers. What's going on? How are you doing it? You can do even historical archival data research. That's not what it appears that Dave does, and it seems to be more of a historical revisionism. Take a piece of data that you got and then tell a really convincing narrative on how you got to your conclusion. But as somebody who has students, I mean, correlation is not causation is that famous phrase. When that story is actually just a lot of correlation and inferences, how did you get to your conclusion? How do you do that research? Forget the expertise and the credentialism. You're making a statement like it's true, and I know Dave's anti-war, and that's great, but you can't be anti-factual, and Dave, without Douglas, just made a bunch of not true statements.
So I actually had the opportunity to meet John Spencer in person in Washington, D.C. He is the world's leading expert on modern urban warfare. And John has been in Israel, he's been in Gaza, he's been all over the Middle East, he's traveled the world, he's spoken with people. And it's interesting because I look at the parallels between somebody like John Spencer, who I would deem as an expert, if not the expert. I mean, he's leading the entire educational program for studying modern urban warfare at West Point University. And I also look at Douglas, who as a journalist, as a media reporter, as an author, as a writer, the two of them have one thing in common, which is the level of deep research that both of them do to come to the conclusions that they come up with when they talk about why it is that Israel is not indiscriminately killing people, or why it is that Israel is not an apartheid state, or why it is that this civilian to combatant ratio is not as high as people think it is. And that's obviously a completely different discussion because people also don't even have the opportunity to separate what a civilian and a combatant is inside of this modern urban warfare terrain of the Gaza Strip. But a lot of people don't even understand that to begin with. I think that's a really important anecdote. Like let's stick with that for a second. Dave Smith, without having been to Gaza, without having been to Israel, without having spoken to an IDF personnel, without having spoken to a Hamas member, if you will, he wouldn't understand the concept of what a human shield is because he hasn't had the opportunity to see it for himself. So when somebody who is obviously supporting Israel's right to defend themselves and why they think Israel has a right to defend themselves, somebody like Dave Smith is going to create a reservation very quick. They're going to take two steps back very quick because suddenly they're hearing a piece of information that goes against what they have been saying and thinking and feeling and basically drilling in people's heads for so long, which is not necessarily the way to be able to actually A, debate, and B, think critically and think rationally. But one of the things that leads people to be able to have critical thinking skills and rational thinking skills is going to see things for yourself. This is why I'm a big believer that someone like myself, now I'm not a journalist or a media expert or, written books like Douglas Murray, and I'm not a war expert like John Spencer, but I live in the Middle East. I've been in the Middle East. The first time was when I was 6 years old in 2001, in the midst of the Second Intifada, where I was walking to school with my brother one morning and a car bomb went off on my street. Like, you can't tell me that I don't understand what it is like to be a person in this terrain. And if you want to be somebody from the outside looking in, contributing, just like Douglas said on Joe Rogan, and having all of these views, these deep views about something, which is incredibly important when you're somebody like Dave Smith or Joe Rogan, where their audiences are so large and their audiences are so loyal and their audience members are such big fans, so that they do know. And Douglas pointed this out, and he did it beautifully by creating a rhetorical question to Dave, which is, maybe you, Dave, are the one with the power. And if you watch that clip of when he said that to Dave, Dave understood it for a second. Joe Rogan, and by the way, some people don't like the way that Douglas started the podcast by essentially putting it out all on the table to Joe Rogan and say, hey man, I don't think it's okay. I actually think it's pretty dangerous that you've for a long time given a platform to a lot of people that are very anti-Israel, because you, as you know, are the largest podcast in the world. A lot of people follow you, listen to you, believe in you, want to believe what you tell them. And so when you platform more individuals in one camp of thinking in a specific niche, that becomes the truth for many people because they've already purchased your ticket. You already have stock. And he knows that. Joe Rogan isn't naive to that. And by the way, Dave Smith isn't either. He wanted to act as if he's just this comedian guy who can, by the way, he's allowed to have opinions. You're allowed to have opinions. Douglas said this to him in the interview. You should go watch the whole thing. He said, you're allowed to think what you want. But if you are going to form these deep opinions and tell people across the world, millions of people who listen to you about something in a region in the world that you've never had the courtesy to go visit, that is weird. And it's also not okay. So I really, obviously, I support Israel's right to defend themselves. A lot of you already know that. But it's a big shame that we've lost the art of this ability to do this deep research. And I think that for anyone in the world, and there's a reason I don't talk about India, for example. I have friends from India. I want to visit India. I hear a lot about it. There's a lot of people on this YouTube platform in this community that are from India. But I've never been there. I don't know enough about India. I don't know enough about it even to be comfortable enough to start talking about it publicly, to form these views on India and Pakistan and that part of the world and the government and regimes. And I don't know a lot. And so I don't like to talk about things I don't know a lot about. And just because you read a lot about it and just because you see a lot about it doesn't necessarily give you the authority, especially when you're somebody who has power to manipulate and influence minds, does not give you the authority to talk about it at that level. That is the point that Dave didn't get, that Joe didn't get, and that all of these radicalized individuals unfortunately will not get either. Anyways, that's today's video. Thank you so much for all your support. See you next time. If you want to continue the conversation, you can support my work for free. Discord does not cost a thing. It is the best way to connect with me and others who are seeking the truth. The link is in the description. But if you want to take it one step further, my Patreon gives you access to the Israel you don't see, uncovering the untold stories of what mainstream media does not show you. The link is in the description, and it helps me to continue this work. Or if you're just looking to help this thing go, PayPal and Buy Me a Coffee is a really easy way to support me. This channel, this work does not happen without all of you. Thank you. I love you. I'll see you next time.